What's happening, guys? Welcome back to the show. This week's guest is top coach. It's Juan Carlos Amorós. Juan is currently head coach of Gotham City, women's pro team in America. Had lots of success last year in his first season. Also coached at Houston Dash, Real Betis, and Tottenham Hotspur's women as well. So really interesting story. Obviously joined us coaching family special. So Glen obviously joins us as well. Talk a bit about his journey, but it was coaching methodology and obviously getting to the top. And actually got us Juan and, started his coaching career a bit like myself and Glen in the Tottenham Hotspur in the foundation. So yeah, really interesting to see how he's made that, journey from grassroots coaching to the very highest level, being one of the top coaches in the women's game at the moment. So top coach, a really top guy, really nice guy as well. And an episode I know you're going to enjoy. So without further ado, let's get into the show. So guys, welcome back to another Coaching Family Special. Joined by my good friend Glen Hicks as always. Glen, how you doing?
Very well, mate, as always.
And a very, very special guest today, Juan Carlos Amorós. Juan, who's head coach at Gotham in America, the women's team there. And also, actually, why don't you give us a brief breakdown? Because we've known each other before, and we've always got a bit of a connection, us three, from our back in the days at Tottenham. But Juan, why don't you give us a little bit of a brief outline of your playing and coaching journey up to this point?
Yeah, well, I will try to be brief because it's been a long time. I'm from Madrid originally. I grew up loving football. I started coaching when I think it was 14 or 15 years old, coaching my little brother's team. And, I always played and coached. I never knew that coaching was going to be my job, but I developed into that role of playing and coaching when I was very young. Obviously coaching little kids. Then I went and played in Holland, where I, fall in love with another ways of playing football, coaching football, understanding the culture of another country. And then I thought I was better than what I thought in Spain, because in Holland I played at a higher level. So came back, did my B license coach in Betis, etc. And then I went and tried to finish my MBA, and I went to try to play like kind of semi-pro in Scotland. I played in the third division and in the Lowland League for East Stirlingshire and Edinburgh City. So really tough years there, learning another way of playing and coaching. Very surprised with the coaching philosophies in Scotland. I loved it there. I did some coaching courses there. Then I moved to London. I kept coaching kids, did a little bit of work with Fulham, but mainly with Bedhead. I created my own company of coaching. Then I traveled to the US, did some coaching in California, in the area over there. And then I signed for Spurs. And in Spurs I was for 10 years. That's what really, that's when I realized I was going to be a professional coach, probably in the part in the US. I was there for 10 years. I worked I was the co-head coach for Tottenham Hotspur ladies by then Tottenham Hotspur women. Did a lot of work in the foundation, a little bit with the academy, always in contact with them. And then I finished there, went to Real Betis in Spain. And then from Real Betis, I went to Houston here in America. All this, with the professional women's game in Tottenham, in Betis, then in Houston. Houston, we also, Betis, in Tottenham, we beat some records, go to the WSL, make it pro, big adventure. Then we went to Houston, beat all the records there as well. It was really successful. And then from Houston, I could stay there, but there was a project here in New York that was very attractive, even if they were, bottom of the league the year before. And, I took the team last year and we went from bottom to top. We won the championship, and here I am now, second year, 25 years later, and second year in Gotham. I tried to really resume those 25 years, but yeah, that's a little bit of the journey,
I mean, that's so one hell of a journey, isn't it? So well done, first of all. It's really good. I mean, it's interesting as well, like, you come through the working in grassroots and working in local schools and young players and stuff like that. How important was that, that grounding in, that in the community type coaching in terms of getting to where you are now? Was there any sort of link there, or was it, that's
I think it was key. I think people have asked me this a lot because luckily, like now in the women's game, I've had, I would say, the privilege and the honor to coach probably in the 3 top leagues in the planet now: Spain, England, and the US. And And people always ask me about the difference between men, women, and professional game, no professional game. I think the key is the people you are coaching. You know, it's completely different if there's a group of professional women of the US or professional women of Spain, but then it's also very different if they are top players, male at 16 years old from Spain or in the community in London. I think it is key that you understand that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter the level you're coaching, you're always coaching people. So how you connect with that people, how you are able to influence them and to guide them, and also to be open to learn from them, I think it is key. So for me, I wouldn't be who I am without being done all the work that I've done in the community, in grassroots, with other coaches, with the relation with parents, with the kids, and yeah, I think that's the beauty of this game, is the amount of people and different cultures and communities you can affect. No?
I mean, you mentioned there, a big difference in coaching. What's the difference between I'm interested in, you coach it in Spain and England and America now. What are the compare and contrast those experiences for us in terms of working with some of the top female footballers there?
Well, I think the main difference comes from probably where the players are coming from. No, I think in Spain and in England, the football is a sport where people really is from the streets or from the community. Here in America is the same, but like the professional structure means the way it's done with the draft and people coming from universities. In the professional game, really the youngest players at this moment in time, now we have we made the news because we played the youngest player ever in history of professional football at 14 years old the other day, but the youngest player in my roster really is 24, apart from a Brazilian girl, but they come into the environment at 24, 23 after going to a university, while in Spain and in England, younger players at 16, 17 that are still at college are already in that environment. So I think probably the biggest difference between both is the age and sometimes the background, no? Like obviously not everyone in Europe that plays professional soccer comes on the back of becoming a doctor or becoming or an MBA or coming into the professional world at the age of 24. I think that's probably the biggest difference in terms of who are the people you're coaching, no?
Do you get different types of players? I mean, you look at, for example, a lot of the English youth teams, English and the Spanish, you get you get certain types of players maybe, that you associate with Spanish football. I'm talking about, those midfielders, those tiki-taka Spanish players or English players got a lot of maybe fast, sort of direct dribblers maybe, or that sort of thing. Do you have that as the same with the women game? Do you notice the similarities, or certain types of football cultures have certain traits or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that with my experience, I realized that how the sport is understood on each country is created different ways of playing it and living it. I think that, and not necessarily the Spanish players are more technical just because they are more technical. They are more technical, or they understand the game on a different way. And that's what makes them make different decisions or develop different parts of the game compared to maybe the English or the Americans or all the countries, the Brazilians, the Dutch. So I think it is really in the culture of the country of how they see the game what creates this profile of players. And obviously, when there is so many players of a profile, the top players of that profile, they're going to be very, very good at it because there is so many of those players doing that, that's why the Spanish players that make it to the top, they're very good at being very technical and understanding the game in the way they are. And that's why, for example, the English players are so good at the 1v1 domination and the physical aspects. But I think we are now tending or trending to a world where teams or countries are being a little bit more holistic on their approach, and there is more and more players now on the women's and the men's game that escape that box of just thinking, these players, the English players are only doing this, the Spanish players are only doing this. And to be successful, I think you can see it at the elite level. You need to be good almost at everything and really understand what is your strengths. So.
Yeah, because sorry, Glenn, I'm hogging the mic.
I'm enjoying listening.
One is it because we had a conversation the other day about we're reflecting on the English team and how maybe some of the midfielders didn't have the traits of the Spanish players. It's interesting, isn't it? Do you think because obviously you've had experience working in England and in Spain, and do you think that because and why when we do have the one-off player who has it. The boy who plays for Palace. He's in there. Maybe he has those attributes. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, well, some football cultures create certain types of players, isn't it? But I mean, you've worked across those cultures. Do you see that? Do you see that in the way it's coached and stuff like that? I mean, you can see the almost like the helicopter picture. You can see over these football cultures and the way players are trained and that sort of thing. Do you know what I'm getting at? Does that make sort of sense?
Yes, I think that. Honestly, I think that the players already have the, I've seen things in England that I haven't seen in any other country in terms of the individual ability. I think what is missing sometimes is encouraging that ability and for these players to play without the fear of making mistakes, no? Like we can see, and obviously a lot of the times for me, the easier one to refer probably is Pep Guardiola, how players that maybe play under him, they develop qualities that before they play with him, nobody thought they had, no? Like, I don't know, maybe like John Stones or Walker, or there are players there that could be on another category, but then when they've actually been guided or encouraged to do certain things on the pitch, they can do it. I think what is important, or when I looked at the England men's and the players and the women's, that you can see it on the women's even more, how these players have been encouraged to do certain things, and now like Kira Walsh or I don't know, Katie Selem, or there is a lot of players there that once they are encouraged, they have it on them. I think what is sometimes the problem is, I don't know if from the coaching side we are actually encouraging that and making the players play without that fear to be able to exploit those attributes, or we are trying to manufacture it too much or not too much, or in a way that doesn't really push those buttons or those attributes from the players, because 100% they have it.
And tell us about your own coaching methodology and your own coaching philosophy. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Pep. Then how do you want your team to play at Gotham?
Yeah, I think one thing that for me is very important, and that has been probably one of the keys of our success, is that we treat every player the same in terms of attention and really trying to help them individually to be the best version of themselves. I think that's something that it doesn't matter, like now we have obviously 6 players that just won the Olympic gold medal 2 days ago, and when they are in the environment, we help them individually as much as we help a player that probably in Europe is not known because he's not at that international level. So we really try to help everyone. So there is that internal competition for places that is going to really push the team and make the team successful. And then we try to play in a way that is very, like that we want to make it fun for the players to play, for us to enjoy coaching it, and for the fans to watch it. I think is, we are the team, I think last year on a stats bomb, we were the team in the world that defended the highest or the farther away from the goal. We try to focus a lot of our job or we always say that to be good on the ball, we need to be good without it. So we can control the game from the ball, but because of the work that we do without it, so we put a lot of emphasis on that. We are a team that really, we need to be very versatile tactically, and that doesn't mean that we change our way of playing, but that our players understand our tactics depending on the moment of the game. Like you can say that we play 4-3-3, but when we are in the high press on a goal kick, we is a 4-4-2 diamond. When we are building, we look like a 3-4-3, and then all of those roles, they are interchangeable. So that's very complex for a player that plays number 9 to finish an attack, and now you are the number 2 and execute those roles. So those executions and those interchanges of roles for us are very important in order to then highlight the players, like for the players to them having to think a lot less without the ball to be able to express themselves with it and following certain parameters, trying to always be, like dominating and try to be offensive. So, I think that's a little bit how we play, but how we play really comes from how we coach as well. No?
Tell us about that then. How you coach. How do you do that? You're working at the highest level there. How do you get your ideas onto the pitch? How do you come into like a new squad and you need to educate the players into this this quite complex way of playing. So tell us a bit about that process, and obviously you've gone through it a few times now, because you've been at you've been at a few that new clubs several times. You go through that process.
Yeah, I think in the professional game there is, I will say, to start with, there is two different worlds when you come into a club. When you come at the beginning of the year or when you come halfway through the year, I think those two big differences in terms of the approach as a coach is very important. Going to the easier one or the most common or the one that happened here at Gotham, obviously we came at the beginning of the year and we really had, we first explained that we always build everything on some values, which is, without going too much into it, that stuff we spoke about everyone is the same, and, the different things that are very important for us, like the respect or everything that is the base of everything we do, because I think that for, treating players as people, especially at this level, is super important, even before they are football players, from there to really build on the football side of things. And then what we try to do is really in precision, we try to specify everything, how we want to be on and off the ball and in transitions and in set pieces. So we use that period of precision, and how we operate normally from back to front. We divide the pitch on 4 zones. So how do we behave on each of those zones and on each of the moments of the game? So when it comes to the end of preseason, we've already, we already have an assemble, or we already have a clear understanding of how the team does from the box defending, to the different blocks, to the high press, and then from the box attacking to the different zones. So how we behave in our build-ups and the different rotations that we do. So that's the base. And then when it comes to competition, we start developing some new concepts from that base, but then always focusing on us. I think it's very important. Well, everything we do here, we always focus on us, and we obviously we look at the opposition, but it's how we do things, how we're gonna hurt this team, not changing what we do to then be effective against this team. I think those are probably the pillars of who we are. No.
Interesting. How much time do you think you'd spend in possession or out of possession in terms of that pre-season work?
Well, I think we focus a lot more in possession of the ball, because I think it's a lot more complex. Like our organization defensively, it's very well structured in a way that it is easier to understand early on. We also have a list of moments that the players, for example, when we lose the ball, the first thing we try to do is counter press as soon as possible. If we don't, then how can we stop the attack of the opposition? How can we delay? How can we retreat to the block? How can, those moments? And then we have a structure, which is with the, we call it the block. And then how do we do that as high as possible on the pitch? And so that's a little bit more of a structure that is always very organized with certain triggers. So we spend probably less time, but it's the most complex side of things. So it's probably the one that brings the most questions, and then we develop from there the offensive side. So I will say, if I have to say a percentage, I don't know, I will say maybe 30% or 25% on the part that is more like around those defending topics, and 70-75% on the part on the ball. But we very weirdly we work one without the other. We always, every time when we prepare pre-season, if we are working in our build out, we're always facing it against our high press, or we're always facing it against things that are maybe, we call it mainly objectives, but always with some sub-objectives there that go against it. So there is always, nobody's in the session just as a mannequin. There is always outcomes out of it.
Interesting. Glen, anything you want to jump in here with?
Yeah, really enjoyed listening. Juan, it's interesting with the age thing, in terms of your recruitment, because in England, like you say, you can chuck 16-year-olds in, 15-year-olds, and it's a regular occurrence in men's and women's football. You're seeing a massive... We were talking about the other day, weren't we, saw about the bursting on the scene of Lamine Yamal and co and all these young ones. With that constraint in the women's top league there, does that really affect your recruitment strategy as well, in terms of who comes in and who doesn't, compared to England, compared to the way you would be recruiting in England?
Yeah, no, 100%. The market here is completely different. I think as head coaches or professional coaches, you really need, before I came, I studied obviously all the rules and regulations of this market, because they are different to the Europeans. and how the contracts work and how is the draft and how, all those things. You really need to understand it to be in the position I am in, and it's completely different. Players here, if you on our club is different, but they don't have the right to choose where they play. Like they can be drafted, they can be traded the next day to another team. If you get to, there's a lot of things there that are different, and then also players that are before last year, players that were, if they were younger than 18, they couldn't be in the league. Now they can. You can have up to 3, but they have to have secure contracts, professional contracts until the age of 18, and they kind of they are not eligible to play at college level anymore. And if they are at college, they cannot go into the professional world until they go through the draft. So it was kind of a very, it's a very, very close market on that aspect. That's why the draft was so important, because the best talent, I'm not talking 17-year-old players that maybe are good or not. Like I'm talking 23-year-olds, top players that are ready to impact the league straight away, were being selected that way. Now, without disclosing too much, that's going to probably change very, very soon. But then here as well, that we have at Gotham, we now have we have a data team, we have a scouting team, we got 4 full-time scouts, plus, we have a very wide network compared to what I was used to. But then also, if I wouldn't be who I am and done all the work that I've done in recruitment through my life, I wouldn't understand or be able to execute some of the deals that we've been able to do. And that's something that it comes from what we said, working at different levels and then grow into it. But there is definitely a big difference in the market.
Interesting. Tell us about then, back to your any can you give us an idea about some key principles you have that you can share, that you can, in terms of your playing philosophy, your playing style, that you want your players to do, or your team to achieve in the game, or anything like that?
Yeah, I think for us it's very important that we want to be. We always say that we want to be offensive while we're being defensive. While we're defending. Sorry. So that's one of the principles that for us is very important, and that our players understand that. And we've shown them the effects of that. That defending well is not only good to don't concede goals, but it's actually very good to score goals. I think that's something that if the player thinks, okay, when I'm defending, this is my first step to have a chance to score, is a very different approach. And for that, you need to really be aggressive on that defending. And by aggressive, I don't mean obviously hurting the opposition. I mean on the approach to it. So in terms of how you do it, far away from your goal, recovering the ball early, high up the pitch, managing the back line. So all those things are very important. I think we praise ourselves as well to be a solid team. As I mentioned before, we want to be a team that is really very difficult to beat, and that we that we can control games from there. I think at the moment we are the best defending record in the league, or even the best now with this competition in the cup, where we've gone all the way from the group stages and semi-finals without conceding a goal. So we take a lot of pride of that. And then we also spoke about this, tactical versatility. And again, it's not about changing the tactic; it's about understanding the different moments, different tactics. And I think as well for us is about, we call it the details. This is something that Glen is very familiar with. We want to be fun, we encourage our players to go 1v1, to combine, to try to do things that are exciting for the fans, exciting for everyone that is watching the games. And I think the players really enjoy that. And we have more and more players, that now maybe are going to the next level of really surprising people. We have players that maybe were maybe unknown in the league or underrated or at a different category, that now they're going up levels and everyone is looking at them like Ella Stevens or Delaney Sheehan, or players that are maybe not as famous as some of the other ones that are in the roster, but that they are really excelling because they are unlocking this through playing without the fear to do mistakes or to fail. No? So that's something that in our principles is also very important. No?
Yeah, interesting. And what can you give us an idea of what a typical week would look like then during the season for you guys?
Well, if I show you the
Have we
meeting,
got enough time?
I just had to try to sort it out because we are, America is crazy in that aspect. We travel, to play an away games. We maybe are away from home 4 or 5 days. Like we have to, we are on the East Coast, so we have to travel to the West Coast, which is a 3 hour difference, which means a 6 hour flight, which is basically going to play. We are almost as far from New York to San Diego how we are from New York to London, So imagine going there to play a game. And now within that, we've qualified for the first time. There's going to be like a Champions League of the CONCACAF. So now we're going to have midweek games in Jamaica or in Costa Rica. So
living the life.
Yeah. So now you can imagine, the amount of traveling and when you speak about the microcycle of a week, how it looks in England, where you play Sunday 2 p.m., play again Sunday 2 p.m., and you have the whole week probably without even traveling. I think it's really affected by the travel here. But if I will have to tell you a normal week, we will do normally we do the day off normally after the game, because with all the traveling, that's how we do it. And then we do like what we call a recovery or re-entry day on the match day +2, where we really focus on the IDPs and we focus a lot on the players that didn't play, but we don't do just sessions for the sake of doing sessions. We do sessions here. That session is probably one of the most important. We help the players individually of, okay, you didn't play this game, we improve this, or you're coming back. This is the things that you are, your strengths. We focus a lot on the strengths. Okay, so you're very good at this. We need to push it. Or you need, like we always try to use those sessions for that. And we're going to be more of an intensive day where we have like, a lot more like, if you want to call it, the small spaces, but always focus on the style and the game plan and what things are gonna help us win. Then we have a bigger day, a bit more. I wouldn't say tactical, because we do tactical every day. For us, is the base of what we do and the concepts that we want to evolve. Then we try to have another day off in the week. It's very demanding, and I think resting psychologically is as important as it is physically. And then we go into normally the match day -1 and playing, or maybe another match day -2, match day -1 playing. It is difficult, but probably the main things here is how affected we are by the traveling, and we're trying to maximize, at least trying to find ways to get players 2 days off a week, at least in a 2-week period, have 2 days off and 1 day off the week after, because here you can imagine there are days that we only travel for a 7-hour flight, no? So it's very complex. The scheduling is probably one of the hardest parts of the job here in America.
And tell us about like your role as a head coach. I mean, how does that work as well? I mean, you brought a couple of lads over that you've from Spurs that we both know, and how does that work in terms of like how do you utilize those guys? How much time do you actually coach yourself on the pitch there? How do you delegate? And tell us about the multidisciplinary aspect of your coaching team, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's very important. The higher probably at the level that you are, that you're surrounded with obviously the best quality of coaches that you know, but also people that you can trust. I think it's super important. That's why we see, and you see it on the men's game as well now, how when they announce the coaching, the signing of a new coach, it normally comes with 6-7 people. So I was lucky enough to do that here. I brought strength and conditioning coach, a head of tactical analysis, 2 technical coaches to work, especially on the individual side of things with the players. Then we have another technical coach, Jen, and then the goalkeeper coach. So that will be more or less the day-to-day coaching team, without talking obviously high performance and like sports science and all the people that I also bring into every coaching meeting that we have, because for me it's very important, that holistic approach to everything that we do. And I will say that's very important. And I think in terms of how much of the coaching I do, I don't know, I would say I probably do around the 60% of it or 50% of it. I really rely on them for the individual technical work. It's very important for me, that attention to detail individually, IDP time, unit work, partnership work, all those things are things that I really rely on them. And probably I take more of when is the whole team approach to things, but then I always oversee what they do. No, I guide them a little bit of what I would like them to execute in certain ways, and then they prepare the practice. But yeah, I think that will be around the percentage if I have to go into something. But I think what is the main thing, there is no right or wrong, but I think what I will advise to people that starts on this is try to always surround yourself with people that you can really trust and be honest with them, and that they can also be honest with you. You know, I think that two-way communication is super important, and that they also are going to have you back when it comes to situations that they need to have it, and that they see the players and the club. They see a together from on that coaching team. And then one other thing that I do with them is I also, on top of the coaching, there is also, you know, my role, or the head coach's role at the professional level. There is endless things that you can be doing. So each of them has different tasks within it that are not purely coaching. You know, one of them is more in charge of everything that comes with logistics and things like that. One of them is more in charge of everything that we have. It has to do with a little bit relation with equipment. One of them is more about communication of the sessions with the rest of the departments, logistics, operations, etc. One of them is in charge of the relation about trialists and people, younger players that come into training. You know, so there is so many things that we have to do as head coaches that you need to really delegate not only the coaching side of things, but there is another world behind the scenes that maybe people is less familiar with, and that is as important. You know, the relationship with the club, managing upwards, managing downwards, all those things are very, very important, not in the day to day.
Interesting. There's one more question. I'm going to let you get back in a minute. I promise, mate.
Enjoying listening.
I'm interested as well, because you mentioned there about you got the two guys doing technical work and the IDP stuff. It's interesting, isn't it? Is it how much scope do you find there is to develop individuals within that? One, within the individual professional game anyway, but two, how much time do you have to work on those individual factors, and how much effect can you have on players, and how much effect does that have on your team? Can it have on your team?
Yeah, so I think for me, at the professional level, you can only improve marginally certain things. You know, I think the way players can improve the most, and what it affects most the team, is tactically. You know, I think players really understanding what they need to do on the pitch from the tactical side, it is the key. If they are all on the same page, you know, players are going to grow like that. And then there is also the technical side. It grows really slowly, but what it does, it really gives the player that confidence and that belief that you're really trying to help them individually to be the best version of themselves, and that makes them more confident when they have to execute the tactical actions, and more confident when they have to execute the technical actions. And these players, at the ages that we coach them, we're not going to show them something new, maybe some little detail here and there, but what you're going to create is that habit of doing this technical work is going to improve marginally, and they're going to be able not to do it because they weren't able to do it, but to believe that they can do it, so they do it. You know, I think that's the key on that technical side. That's why for me it's so important. And then they also do analysis of how it is in the game, so in training when they are doing those individual technical actions, and then also the development of the physical side. No, so I think with the technical side is very interesting, because it's not only about the execution of things, it's about the belief, the freedom, and the less thinking going around concepts, and especially to don't be afraid of doing certain things. You know, I think that's very important. You know, like, maybe here I can give you an example without disclosing the name, because this is public, but this was public. So there is a player that she wasn't playing at the beginning of the year, and you know, every day I saw her there, like she did a lot of technical work on the pitch to try to be better, and she wasn't playing. Then I saw her in the gym doing volleys against the wall with her headphones, like just working on it. And then, you know, one of these games, we lost this game, and she came on, and you know, the ball bounced on the edge of the box, and she went for a volley. So I was doing video with her, and I said, "Oh, what do you think here?" And she said, "Oh, I don't know, Juan, what do you think?" It was a disaster. And I said, "Look, like when you had that volley, I thought if somebody's gonna hit that volley well, it was gonna be you. Ella is the player. It's, you know, that volley went to the corner flag, so it was definitely not a goal." So she was a bit embarrassed about it, but look, this is what you need to do. You work on it, you believe on it, blah, 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 and then you go and execute it. And then, I don't know, I feel like a month later, she got a superb goal with a volley. Like, he won goal of the week, and he won, you know, whatever. And then in the interview, she mentioned how we had this conversation, and you know, just her having that belief that she could hit that volley, you know, like, she backed herself, and then she scored a superb goal, and then she won goal of the week, player, whatever it was. But she could do the volley when she took it to the corner flag. It was the same person. It's not something she's done. Obviously, the habit of doing it, but it's the belief on yourself what it really changed the players. That's why when you asked me before about the English players, there is top players there. Like, it's amazing. Like the level of Phil Foden, like of all these people, is just world class. It's just how they are executing, or how much they believe they have on them doing it, and the freedom to do it if they get it wrong. What I think is the difference.
Interesting. Glenn, do you want to come in here, mate? I'm sorry, mate.
No, it's okay. If ever I was going to be quiet for someone, I was enjoying listening to Juan. Juan, so we know Juan's background really well, Juan, and what I'm hearing, all this stuff, I've heard you say loads of times just in this conversation about being fearless, giving them the encouragement and the freedom basically to express themselves and fail, just even with that example you showed there. I think it's important for the listeners as well, whether they've got aspirations to get to senior level like yourself. I think we're listening to a player and people developer, not just a head coach and not just a manager. I can comfortably say that, having worked with you. And what would you say the difference is, Juan, with a manager or a coach or someone like yourself? What if you could list top 2 or 3 qualities that you've got? So developing your player there in the first team, you've been doing it for years and years. We've seen players improve at Spurs. There was a massive impact with the Spurs ladies. Your legacy is left behind you there. You impacted, made all the majority of the players there. What would you say the top 2 or 3 qualities for a player and people developer like that are, or not general, but for you? What are your top 2 or 3 qualities that trying to capture something here for the listeners?
I think it is very important to really create a relation with players or with the people around you, that they are really able to to be honest with you, and for you or us to listen to them. I think sometimes we hear but we don't listen, and the head coaches or coaches, we are too much into our thing that we forget, like, we're not perfect, we are also a human being, it doesn't change. So I think that part is very important. I think it is very important to have that understanding of people as well. I think you need to understand who you are working with and understand what are that person's motivation specifically. I think that's also super important. But I think it is and the final part I will say is probably that it's not about you. You know what I mean? Like, I think as coaches, we always say, "Oh, I won this game," or "I lost," or you need to really believe if you are gonna be in a team that is really the team. And the key is that the people also feel that you really believe it. And I think that's the really tough part for us coaches, not because you can't say it, but it's like, how do you show that in the everyday behavior? That's really what is important for you, and the hardest part is to transmit that, because that's something you cannot fake, that's something that it really has to be natural, because it's a perception, words that you're going to say. And I think if you look at it, people or the top managers on regular basis, they probably got those requirements, wherever are at some point last longer in time. I don't know, like Jurgen Klopp, for example, or there are other people that maybe last a little bit less in time, but like Mourinho, that is very effective on a very short periods of time, but then in the long period of time, it maybe changes. At least on the recent years of his career, obviously Mourinho, top manager, don't get me wrong. So yeah, I think probably those aspects are things that are very important for the players. And I think this is something that people forget for the staff to feel. I think coaches, or when we always, talk about coaching, we always, have the coach and the players, the coach and the player. You have a lot more people to manage sometimes off the pitch than what you have on the pitch, like the rest of the coaching team, high performance, sports science, medical teams, logistics, operations, equipment, all that people, scouts, all the people affects the performance of the team. So that's also our responsibility as head coaches to make sure that you're managing them, that you're helping them, that you are, and that's also a part that is, I'm not going to say as important as the players, but very close,
It's interesting, isn't it, Saul? Because what you were saying there, Juan, we spoke on the last podcast about, or one of the previous ones about the success of Luis de la Fuentes, and I know you as a proud Spanish super fan. Luis de la Fuentes wasn't the unicorn name, was he? But he's a youth developer, he's a player developer, he's gone through the youth thing. And one thing Spain were, as much as, look, we know that Spain teams down in the past have had better players individually, pound for pound, like Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets, David Villa, like sensational world-class players. But what they were, yes, they've got some incredible players like Rodri and even Zubimendi we spoke about, who's just turned down Liverpool and is clearly showing strong values and his love for Real Sociedad and Spanish football. But they were the best team as well, Juan. Everything you're saying there, it was typical of it, wasn't it? So we were saying that, 7 out of 7 games. But when you talk about about alignment, you've got a completely aligned team, and I think it's exceptional leadership from Luis de la Fuentes the last couple of years, because it was tough coming in after, I think it was Luis Enrique when it left straight away, and I don't think anyone was really in favour of him. But I think everything you've just hit the nail on the head there was exactly what Spain demonstrated in the Euros, and probably what separated them to everybody else.
Like Juan said, in it, they were playing with confidence. They were on the same page. They were like freedom, I suppose, right? I mean, that's what you alluded to earlier.
Yeah, I think it is key when it comes to these moments or to teams. That is the feeling. Like every team, when you look at it, teams that win, they always have that in common. Whatever is the reason to put them together, and they always have it. Like us last year, for example, when we qualified, we were 2 fixtures to go. The league was very tight. We could win the regular season, but we ended up making it to the playoffs tied with teams that they didn't qualify to the playoffs. We had some. A lot of players that were out. Like we had a lot of situations that were very tough. But we had our captain Ali Krieger, legend of the US, was retiring, and that like how the team gathered together to fight through. We were the first team in the history of the playoffs and the championship to win the championship, being the last, the bottom of the playoff team, but then the bottom of the teams that qualified to it. No, so I think it is very important. When it comes to those moments where it's like decision-making time, that the team is together, that the team is really pushing, that those aspects give you that extra edge. And we know, like, it's his margins. Look, England, Luis de la Fuente won, but Dani Olmo cleared the ball of the goal line.
Good header, wasn't it?
20 seconds to go. Those little things. Those things normally happen to the team that actually has been the most together. And that's why in football it's so important to try to control and to manage every aspect, but at the same time relying on other people to do it. I'm sure that Luis de la Fuente also has a fantastic coaching team that was really good at doing their own job. So I always highlight on this Zinedine Zidane, which in the coaching world in Spain was like, oh, Zidane only does this and that, but like how he brought together everyone and trust on the right people to be the only coach in history to win 3 Champions Leagues in a row. That's something that gets underrated and undervalued a lot. So, those things are also very, very important.
Yeah, it's almost like masterful leadership, isn't it? So we've talked about it a lot, don't we, with the leadership and stuff. And yeah, it's interesting.
So listen, I won't let you go. I'm sure you're a very busy man. You've taken some time out. Just lastly, could you give a bit of advice to any young coaches out there who want to have an incredible career like yourself already in the game?
Yeah, I would say just follow your passion. Don't be looking for straight away outcomes of things. Put your heart into everything you do, and step by step come out of your comfort zone to keep growing. I think it is not everything you're gonna do is gonna be rewarded straight away, but it's gonna be rewarding to yourself and helping you grow. So, and I know Glen knows really well this, but like I was listening to this kind of podcast. Well, not podcast, but like because they didn't exist by like 20 years off. But like I've done absolutely everything. And I take pride of it. Like I've gone, and Glen has seen me carrying goals in my bag with a bag of footballs, traveling on the TFL around London and coaching from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. And I wouldn't be here without doing all that stuff that I did. And now, look, I am, coaching Olympians that win gold medals in the best league in the world. So I think it is, you just need to follow your passion and just trust on yourself, believe in yourself, come out of your comfort zone, and don't look for straight away rewards in everything you do. I think that's probably what I would say, and yeah, I think that's what I would like to believe I've done, and it's taken me to where I am. And be a good person as well. I think don't look always at yourself for everything. It's good to do things for the others, you know, when you can. I think that's also very, very important value.
Juan, thanks, mate. Been top. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Saul. Thank you, Glenn.
Muchas gracias, amigo.
Muchas gracias.